Hey, Eric.
Hey, Chris.
Hey, did you know that we have a Patreon page that you can go to support us on patreon.com/retroam?
Yeah, the microphone on my face is thanks to the Patreon.
Yeah, thank you, the patrons. Thank you for your support. We've gotten nice equipment that makes it easier for us to not have to edit out Eric's nose whistle and my bourbon slurping. It just happens automatically. The equipment's just good.
It's
great. It's great.
Yeah, it's great. How about we start the TV show?
Would you like to hear some hot sounds that I have recorded?
Yes.
Okay, great. Welcome to Retrograde Amnesia, a comprehensive podcast about Xenogears. This is a game about questions, and in order to answer those questions, this game must show us everything that we need to know in order to arrive at the answers. But before we arrive at the answers, we must create a podcast that goes at least 52 episodes. My name is Chris. I am joined tonight by Eric. Hey, Eric.
You claim this game provides all of the answers, but how come I walk away from it confused every time?
Because you haven't recorded the podcast that we're about to record tonight that's going to provide you with a lot of answers.
That is correct, Chris.
Yes, you need this podcast in order to understand this game, or you need to just play it multiple times.
Yeah.
But why would you want to do that when you can listen to us talk
or
about it?
Read 20 years worth of forum discussion on the same video game, but instead we're here.
We are also joined tonight by the RealNet via Discord. The RealNet is a collective of informed and valuable patrons that give us informed and valuable feedback while we record.
Good.
Well,
Great. You did it.
Welcome, RealNet. We're glad you're here with us tonight. You can join the RealNet at patreon.com/retroam.
What portion of the game is this? Are we still in Fallen Star?
We are
allegedly.
In the middle, yes, we are allegedly still in the middle of the episode Fallen Star.
Last time we left off, I believe it was in the Khan and id conflict.
I think we probably should have talked about this before we started recording, but I think you're right. They were in the middle of fighting and also working out their feelings.
Right. Khan was trying to literally beat the Fei out of id, and then id was just trying to beat up Khan because that's what id does. He destroys. That's his primary purpose.
Nobody was really approaching the situation in the best way.
There was not a whole lot of maturity going around.
No.
Here.
Khan was like, Khan was essentially,
frustrated?
He was frustrated, but he was also sort of abandoning id instead of supporting id, because I think we're going to find this out later, but I think id thinks that his purpose is death and destruction, and no one's ever told him otherwise. And maybe Dad.
Id has not seen the movie Inside Out to realize that all emotions are valuable, not just rage. Cowardice can be a tool sometimes.
That's a good movie. Louis Black is in it.
Really?
Yeah, he plays the anger
Oh,
emotion.
that's right.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, as we start, the one who is torn apart is playing.
Yes, Fei blue screens.
He does. He has blue screen. He's floating through the blue. I think he understands implicitly that he is inside of id, or inside the...
Yeah, this world eventually, instead of just being another abstract this game retreats to, it is revealed as the inside of id world, presumably where id is imprisoned the entire time. It is a world filled with hatred and sadness. Fei understands id now. It's a world deprived of happy memories. But Fei says it feels, quote, good and, quote, pleasant.
It's weird.
It is. This makes Fei seem selfish as the person that's kind of hoarding the happy memories, and id is just boiling over time.
Yeah. I think maybe this is the first time Fei understands that he himself is just a cover created to hide id.
Yes.
And I think that's a pretty shitty remedy by Khan. Khan's the one who sealed id away, but also you could read it that way, or you could read it as a informed value judgment where he was like, I don't know what else to do at this point in time, and I have apparently he has ability to seal up personas.
Right, like it is getting to be the end game point, so Khan is playing the last of his cards here.
Let's think about this question as we go forward, but did Khan know much about Fei being the contact? Like, did he become privy to that information before the moment in which he sealed it away, or did he just do it because of the power that was on display?
Khan is from Shavat, correct?
Yeah.
And you have to assume Lacan is still fairly well known there. There's got to be some like lithographs or paintings or something of him there. And then when his son turns out to look, or did id always look as cool as id? Was Fei, like clearly they don't have the same like facial structure, right? Like which one of those, I guess since young Fei looked like young Fei, maybe he always looked like Fei.
And young id looked like pretty much like Fei.
Okay, so we can assume maybe your child is starting to sport characteristics of the contact. So that's not really answering your question about did he know, but I would think that there's some sort of visual representation of Lacan floating around.
Also, he would have noticed the changes in Kieran, probably.
Yeah, well, no, it deliberately says he didn't.
Yeah, well,
later.
Let's talk about that when we get there.
Okay.
For a moment, there's a brief moment that Fei thinks that he should just come together with id and wipe away everything.
Yeah, he considers that not existing is the best option.
Yeah.
Internal suicide.
I didn't read this as necessarily suicide. I read it as the Lacan plan, where he was like, okay, id, let's destroy everything, because that way we can kind of wipe out the things that are causing this.
If you submit to that, then you're effectively wiping out your consciousness and just letting that take over, right? Like you're becoming a doormat for whatever the other personality wants to do.
Yeah, that's true. He doesn't hang on to the nihilism for very long, though.
Yeah, the save point noise comes through and allows him to tap into Seiden's message.
Yeah, okay, that was my question. Was that Seiden or Khan calling to him?
Well, I think the last thing, remember, I forget what it was in the last episode, but Seiden was, like, it was important that Seiden said something while Fei was out of it.
That's right. He reminded...
And this is what bleeds through the subconscious.
Yeah, you're totally right. He reminded her...
Of Elly or something like that?
That he needed to rescue Elly.
Yeah.
And then because of that, he gets that resolve back rather easily.
Like, he hears it on the inside in his mind.
Yep.
Then we get to go to a movie theater.
Yeah, we get the pretentious film grain ball kicking scene back.
Yeah, this is a little bit like the Sophia thing was sepia toned. This is just old timey film strip with film grain.
Yeah,
of Fei playing ball with his mother. It's like they're playing kick the ball back and forth. Is it the same angle as the last time? I thought it was a different angle of their Solarian household. Shivadian household.
In my memory, it was the same.
Yeah, it's a possibility.
This place, according to id, and I think we might get the speakers wrong a couple of times because it's hard to tell who's talking.
Hard to figure out who's articulate here.
It's you can tell who's talking based on the context and the position of the text, but it's important to note that there's no text boxes here. It's just disembodied dialogue floating at the top or the bottom of the screen. But this place, I believe, according to id, is the room of the coward.
Yes, my teenage bedroom.
Yes, also. Yes.
Fei has apparently been here many times before.
Yes. Do you remember one of the times that Fei was here?
No.
Okay, so do you remember after the Desert Despair sequence when the id Veltal chokeslammed the Yggdrasil?
Of course, who could forget?
Yeah, the best scene in the game probably, or one of the best scenes in the game. During that, or after that, I should say, before Fei awoke in Kislev, we saw the ball kicking scene for the first time. And the coward, I believe it was the coward, whoever the child that is sitting there on the floor watching the film, turns to Fei and says, "You're not supposed to be here." I read this as id deliberately showing Fei this scene to either A, fuck with him, or to let him know what is going on.
It's kind of a happy memory, right? If it's deprived of those memories, how does he even have access to that?
He's not showing him the memories. He's showing him that the fact that the coward is there holding the memories. I think.
See.
Yeah.
But in this scenario, it's not necessarily the coward, right? There are three Feis here that decide to watch his most treasured possession, which I guess is Fei, id, and the coward.
Yeah,
so they all kind of preemptively combine to watch this sequence?
They're watching this particular sequence, but they don't get the full story until a little bit later. Id says that he feels worthless because everyone he's ever known has told him he is worthless. And I think he describes himself as the leftover dregs.
Yeah.
Which is depressing to think that someone would call themselves that.
The Danny DeVito, the crap.
Whoa, you telling me I'm the crap?
Yeah, yeah. And it's obvious right here that it has never been treated like a person.
Right.
And it's sad.
So this is where Fei retreats to, because it's a world that he's allowed to be happy in and kind of retreat from his daily life. It reminds me of Happy Gilmore, when Happy Gilmore had to go to his happy place to zen out and actually make a putt. Like, it's the same kind of, I wouldn't call it cowardice, but when you're having a bad day, it helps to find something to look forward to or something to fall back on.
Yeah. Well, the difference here is that Fei is not normally allowed here.
Yeah.
Normally this room is only reserved for the coward persona that basically just sits there and watches the happy memories all the time because of the trauma that we're about to learn.
Yeah. And then Id says he'll show us everything.
Yeah.
And there's a 10-second countdown.
Yeah, a old-timey time film countdown.
And then it starts off, the first line of dialogue is perfect flashback dialogue.
Yeah. Ours was an ordinary family.
Ours was an ordinary family.
Ours was an ordinary family.
Yeah. Can we call in Sam Elliott to say that for us, please?
Yeah, that'd be really good.
I have a heritage from the West, my family. I had a relative in the Alamo.
In my head, I pictured Brad Pitt at the beginning of Interview with the Vampire.
Oh, yeah. That works too.
A strict but reliable Khan walks into the kitchen.
Yes.
And little Fei jumps up and down with joy.
Yeah, it's the
Classic dad.
Yeah, it is classic dad, and the sprites in this game aren't particularly expressive.
Yeah, does he raise his arms or is it just hop?
He just hops, but you get the point.
Yeah.
Like, because you've been trained at this point in time through 16-bit RPGs of like when a sprite hops up and down very quickly, a child is excited.
Yes, hopping is excitement.
Yes.
How is Karen described? Kind and loving.
Oh, yes.
Kind and loving Karen. It was complete happiness. But then one day, Mother changed.
Mother suddenly changed. She was like a totally different person.
When he says that, the Karen sprite is a slow motion turnaround.
Oh, really? Like
Yeah.
he's glaring at us?
Yeah.
Being like, I hear you talking about me.
From that day on, Fei lost his home.
And this is, well, we know at this point what this change was, right? We know that at some point, Miang
She
became Karen.
Karen got Mianged.
We know that from the Krellian Ramses flashback
Right.
in the test tube when Ramses was created.
Yeah. When they shit talked the fetus.
Yes.
Fei describes his father as always being away at work. Do we know what his job was? He worked in Shavad, but like,
I think he was part of their special forces or whatever.
Okay, so he was commando. That would explain the fighting skill. I don't know if he was in like, sewage management or something.
No, he was definitely a front. He was. I think he may have even been like a special agent that was sent out on missions by the Queen and stuff like that. So he was very.
Shavad was pretty non-interventionalist, non-violent in that time. So maybe he just was doing reconnaissance or something. So this is kind of illustrated in a sequence when Karen approaches little Fei and Fei gets scared and backs into a bookshelf.
Yeah.
Implying that he is now afraid of his mother.
Yeah.
And then something more sinister happens after that.
Well, yeah. Well, before the scene changes, it says, from that day on, Fei lost his home. And then you have, I think you maybe have a couple of scenes, or at least one scene of Khan leaving to go get smokes.
Yeah.
And maybe not coming back for a while.
Yeah.
And then we get some narration that says when his father was away, Fei was taken to a place with mysterious machines.
Yeah. It's a lab. It looks like Krellian's operating room, but this is in Shavad. Like, it would have to be, right? How the fuck would Karen get him out of there and not blow his cover or their cover? Like, you can't just leave Shavad.
But we saw Karen with Krellian, though. So did...
I would assume Miang has Fei. I don't know. I mean, logically, it looked like the same assets as those labs in Krellian's lab.
Because if, let's say that the previous Miang died and then suddenly took over Karen.
Yeah.
At that point in time, like, I think the memories and everything passed down. So at that point in time, she could have technically contacted Krellian and said, hey, let me up in your lab. I have something to show you.
Yeah, it's a possibility.
Which is kind of the way, that's kind of the way I read it based on the flashback that we saw with Krellian and Karen.
I guess it's easier to murder people in Solaris than Shavad too.
Yeah.
So we're going to pin that on in Solaris.
Yes.
Okay.
Inside, there were many strangely dressed people.
Yes.
We're certainly seeing an area that looks like Krellian's lab. I'm reading it as it is Krellian's lab.
Yeah.
So
I mean, where else are weird experiments conducted in this universe?
Yeah. Fei was subject to experiments that were painful, and his trauma is on full display here.
Isn't he on like a gurney and lots of probes get injected into him?
Yeah, it's
when
rough.
he's on that operating table.
Yeah, it's rough. And the narration even says that like he's crying out for his mother, and his mother didn't do anything.
Yeah, there are flashes as he begs his mom for help and asks and why mother never came to his aid. He had no way of resisting and he endured.
Yeah.
So that's pretty traumatizing, right? When your mother figure, the person you trust, does a heel turn and decides to make you a guinea pig experiment.
Yeah, I thought it was a pretty effective way of putting that trauma on display here without having to use anime or music or anything like that. It was just like the storytelling, the narration, and combined with the visuals was enough to get the point across that
I don't think
it was serious child abuse.
It invented any new assets too. It just reused all the previous stuff, which is smart for your disc 2 economy.
Yeah.
So then people who look like blonde D-block dudes are gathered around Fei because of his, quote, anima relic compatibility.
Yes. This is why Fei has the ability to pilot anything. I mean, the same reason that Ramses was able to do so, because he was sort of a clone of... He was a clone of Cain, but he was sort of originally supposed to be a clone of the... or an artificial contact.
Right.
But the dialogue says, this psychic contact with Fei was to force him to awaken, but no one could make contact with Fei. The power drawn out of Fei, regardless of his will, destroyed them all. And then that's when they parade, like you said, they parade those Kislev battlers on there.
Over and over.
Do you think that they were literally Kislev battlers? Because we know that there's all this data being collected on Kislev. Like there's reasons that these people are here to be forced to fight.
Yeah, I don't think those sprites are an accident.
I don't think they are either. I mean, I know that a lot of things in this game are done by necessity, but I think that it's important that to point that out, that the battling arena, and we know that the Ethos had control over the battling arena, so you would have to think that was a way in which humans, surface dwellers, were harvested for the purposes of Solaris.
There's actually a delineation there. The battling committee actually used to rule in Kislev before Kaiser Sigmund took over.
Yeah.
Perfect work spoilers.
Yes.
But so they had a large amount of influence. They reported directly to Solaris. So around that time period, which was before Sigmund, right? He's only been in power, I don't know, not quite that long. But I assume the battling committee was feeding these people directly up top.
Yeah. And I think that maybe perhaps there is some sort of alignment between the contact and those that can align with anima relics that was needed in order to execute the scenario. Because I remember that the Gazel Ministry specifically commented about how like Fei was surrounded by the anima or the animus, one of the other.
One of the two.
Yeah, one of the two. I think it was like shortly after the Goliath sequence that they specifically made that comment. So that makes me think that Miang was trying to force that synchronization,
like push all the data in as quickly as possible, even on the immature brain of a child.
Yeah, and it kind of backfired, as we'll get to a little bit later.
Awakening God requires things to be in a perfect order, and things divided in the past must become whole again, which is a more succinct way of saying all these relics have to be in place so the contact can't be imperfect. Yeah,
it's basically saying this is our scenario that we have to achieve, and Miang via Karen was trying to force this, because I mean at this point in time, Miang has failed a number of times to properly harvest humans in order to revive Deus, because we know that Zeboim doesn't exist anymore, and we know what happened at the end of what happened 500 years ago.
So I would assume her methods are getting a bit more desperate at this point, with just lining people up to get murked.
Am I ever going to be able to revive God, man?
Yeah. I don't think she would ever stop trying, because that's her programming, but my favorite quote from this is when they say, like, after Boy Fei is just murdering all these people over and over and just annihilating them, the quote, "It was a scene from hell."
Yeah.
What did you picture?
Well, when somebody says a scene from hell, you think of like red flashes and blood splattering on the wall and like crying and screaming, like just terrible things that you don't want to be in your head.
I thought of which is exactly what you're describing. I thought of the hell dimension from Event Horizon.
Oh yeah, well yeah, that works too.
It's perfect.
Yeah, perfect works. This is the real odd thing here, is that we're about to learn that this trauma is what created id. We kind of already know that, and that's what separated id from the coward. And by separating the personas through the trauma, it's actually Miang messing up again and creating an imperfect context, which is like, I mean, Miang's been pulling strings for centuries, and I'm starting to read her as sort of a fuck up. Like, she keeps fucking this up. She also is imperfect, so she can't get the elements right. Yeah. Like, this is not a perfect god. The Demiurge definitely doesn't quite line up to the perfection as that we perceive as like the real god, which I can identify with that. There's a soy beef patty that I've been trying to cook like 8 times in a row, and I fucked it up every single time. Like I fucked half an hour ago. I filled my entire kitchen with smoke on this thing. So there's some stuff that no matter how often you try, you're just not going to get it right. Yeah, that's absolutely true. Like making a podcast. Yeah. So we go to a house. The scene goes black, and we're back to the household, and this is where it becomes even more sinister. Yeah, in front of Father, she acted normally. Yeah. Fei was unable to confront his father about this. He didn't believe what young Fei was saying because he was so focused on his work. Yes, Father's mind was taken up by his work, and he didn't really listen. He just thought it was childhood fantasies. The Khan sprite laughs and leaves, and conclusion, Khan fucking sucks ass. Chris, if you told your father that your mom was a different person when he left for work, or if she got home from work first or some shit like that, and there was no like way to record her or use your talk boy or any of that stuff, would Father have believed you? No, but my father wasn't somebody who knew how to seal up personas. Okay, that you know of anyway. Yeah, that I know of. I'm pretty sure my dad would have been like, what the... Yeah. Are you playing too much Nintendo? What is... No, see... Is this because of that underwater level in Turtles? Fei and Khan have a different situation. They live in, Sky City Shavat? Yeah, sort of. So... My immediate question here is, and this gets answered later, but as Elly was still Sophia,
what kind of control, I mean, as our Elly is also turning into Sophia, what kind of control is the past persona under? Is it controlled by the new one so they can slip back into it, or is it a blend of the two people? Like, I wasn't sure of what was, like, if Karen was just totally dominated at this point, or if it bled through on occasion, or if it was kind of like a merger between the two with one dominating all important decisions.
It feels like Miang has 99% control, but as we're going to see later, there's some Karen that leaks back through.
99% control, but also access to Karen knowledge when required.
Oh, yeah.
It's like they have their memory banks, but they're not allowed to act or something.
Maybe so. And
she knows about all of Karen's life, like what her shit was and everything.
Yeah, she does, but she doesn't necessarily, like, she doesn't have the ability to tap into that to, like, completely become Karen.
Because she's fooling Khan.
Yeah, that's true, but he's an asshole.
Yeah,
so,
good point.
I don't know.
So Fei's solution to all this was to form a separate persona to deal with the trauma, obviously.
Yes. This is the moment in which it was created.
Yes.
And we see, I think they show this on a black screen or a blue screen where the evil Fei boy sprite is created. It says, "My role was to have all the things he hated forced upon me the moment they arose." And that's when the sprite turns red.
Yeah.
And the game from that point, begins to associate id as this singular destructive force. And he at that point in time becomes like the bad alter within a dissociative identity disorder system of personas. And the id character himself kind of plays on the stigma of that condition in a way that you could kind of consider bad or harmful to people in real life who have that disorder. Like, think about like Jekyll and Hyde. That's another kind of...
It simplifies a very complex condition.
Yes. And I also thought about the movie Primal Fear. Have you seen that movie?
Not in a long time.
Essentially, there was a character that killed a priest that abused him.
Oh.
But that person had dissociative identity disorder, but that the second alter was just an evil killer and wasn't treated like
a person who was just
like a
pure
person.
violence.
And this game kind of does this too.
Yeah.
I guess you could say on the contrary to that, like the way you could think about that from the perspective of how this game was written is that this game is super dedicated to like manifest Freudian concepts with the plot and the characters and stuff like that. So if you have a character named id, it has to behave that way.
He's going to be doing id stuff.
Yeah. So, and the original tenet of the story there's the Takahashi tenet of the story was that he wanted to write a story about a dissociative killer with multiple personalities. Mm-hmm. And then Sorya Saga wanted to write a story about a woman who gives birth to all of humanity. And then they worked backwards from there. And so that was, if that was the starting point, they couldn't get away from that, but it did kind of play with the stigma of a dissociative person, maybe a not great way.
Yeah. I mean, in any kind of situation with storytelling, there has to be drama and conflict. And unfortunately, when their mental illness comes into play, whether it's Hollywood or video games, it's usually pushed to the most comedically inaccurate portrayal possible in the interest of creating drama and simplifying it for the viewer.
Yeah, for sure. It says at that point, "From the time of my division from him, I was dominated by hatred. That hatred naturally turned into destructive impulses. I wanted to destroy everything," which is, the money line for what I was just talking about.
It's a good Ladytron song.
Yeah.
So then Khan eventually, to his credit, noticed that Karen was Miang, but it was too late.
Yeah, it was too late. It had already separated from the coward. And the current Fei, like I in my notes, I started calling the protagonist Fei current Fei. Current Fei interrupts and asks why his mother would do such a thing. And then id spells it out for the viewer.
It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, and says, yes, that woman, mother, was Miang.
He mentally denies it and retreats. Yeah. And then doesn't mother is Miang or mother was Miang fill the screen? Or what? I mean, or is it just a black screen with mother was Miang in small text?
I think so. Yeah.
It's not the like become as God's thing, but it was a similar revelation for Fei where he kind of can't believe this shit right now. Like the hits just keep on coming.
Yeah, and I really like the door slams noise. Like it's perfect. It's a perfect way to say, for Fei to say, no, I do not accept what you're talking about, even though it might be the truth.
Yeah, you run away from it. So next, we're on the battlefield.
Khan is speaking on the battlefield, and he confirms what we just learned, that Karen had indeed become Miang. And we learn, I think we already know this.
Yeah, but they simplify it and say that Miang has multiple host bodies.
Yes, Miang's roots are sealed in the genes of all women.
It says it was Mother's turn, and then he says something about Elly, and then it and Khan fight again.
Yeah,
Round 2.
Fight.
This, I think, I don't know if this was deliberate or not, but this whole, like, exchange a couple of blows and then exchange dialogue thing is something that we see in film and television all the time, especially anime. So, I like it.
And then Miang notices that Fei's memory time axis had increased 2 or 3-fold.
Yeah.
The fuck does that mean?
Well, Eric, I don't know what it means, but I'm going to tell you what I think it means.
Okay.
Okay, so somehow, I feel like Miang was able to discover the fact that Fei had some sort of hidden subconscious memories of past lives.
Not of trauma, but of past lives.
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense. Because the follow-up to that is this led her to believe that Fei was the contact.
Indeed.
Which is a pretty good indicator of contact. What's the word?
Transmigration.
Potency? Likelihood?
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
So it's weird here because Seitan asks something. He's like, the contact? And I was like, doesn't he?
Do you know what the contact is? Oh, shit, Seitan.
No, he knows what the contact is.
Are you sure? Oh, well, yeah, because no.
His job was to monitor Fei to see if he was the contact.
I thought his job was to monitor Fei to see if he was dangerous.
Because he's the contact.
I thought because he was id.
Because he's the contact.
Was he on Solaris's? Well, I guess he had to be on Solaris's radar if Kane was, or his. Yeah, he would have. I don't know.
I think this is just a moment of them inserting that question, what's the contact, so that the player can be reminded of what's the contact.
Right.
And then, it is true, too, if you're a first-time player, that
it's crazy.
You probably have forgotten what the contact is by this point in time, even though you've been told it multiple times.
There's so many pronouns, at a certain point, you're not going to remember all of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, you haven't heard about the drive in a while.
Yeah.
You haven't heard about lambs in a while. Contact may have been flushed out with the rest of those, especially if you've been playing this game since August.
Then we get some awesome disembodied text that says, yes, I was the contact. That's why he called out to me and why the time had come. That was id speaking.
Yes. And then we go back to the front yard.
Yes, outside in the grass, a scene, a hell of a scene.
Khan's in rough shape.
Grahf is there.
Yep.
And I think, I was waiting for Grahf to show up in this moment because I knew he did, but I feel like a first-time player might be, gotcha. Like that might have been a revelatory moment for a first-time player to start to see things come full circle.
Yeah.
Here.
Fei begs Mom to help, who does nothing.
Yes.
Karen's sitting there idly, kind of watching her husband, with quotation marks, get the shit kicked out of him by Darth Vader.
Yeah. Grahf came seeking power that exists within me to return to his own body.
Yeah.
You understand now, Grahf is Lacan. We, his descendants, who inherit his lingering thoughts and memories from him, only know too well. And that is, again, a moment of like, guys, remember, Grahf is Lacan.
Yes.
Question, would it have been cooler if this was the moment in which it was explicitly told to us?
I think so, but only if Grahf, I understand it's a different corporeal form, but if Grahf unmasked and had the Fei face.
Yeah, that would have been cool too.
Like Maybe. That would have been, I don't entirely agree with Lacan being also like Mianging over to different people.
Yeah.
At a certain point.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if we've learned yet, but we will soon.
So it then goes on to explain that 500 years ago, Grahf destroyed everything on the face of the earth.
Yes.
And
that's
then
quite a revelation.
Another quite a revelation here is that he mastered how to possess the bodies of others by dwelling in their minds. He was probably enabled to do this after his contact with the existence.
The capital E existence.
Capital E existence.
Capital E existence.
His will moves on through time. And I think Xenogears is wise not to explain how the shit that works.
Yeah.
Because I don't need to know about consciousness transferring, and there's already enough digital people and digital presences.
Transmigrations.
Transmigrations.
Grahf had come here to get the perfect reincarnation of his physical body.
Which was Fei, right?
Which was Fei. According to the way the game treats this, Fei at this point in time was no longer a perfect contact because he had multiple personalities.
Yeah. Miang was poisoning the contact.
Yeah, basically. That's the way the game treats it. Khan couldn't beat him, and quote, he pitifully fought on while coughing up his lifeblood.
Yeah, he coughed up blood.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Then we get anime.
He couldn't take it anymore, and he released his power via anime.
Yeah, and what we're going to get here is fragments of his scene that gets fleshed out later.
Yeah. We see child Fei explode into many beams of like energy light, except for one of them is red. Karen kind of stares at the situation and then kind of cuts out, and we get narration and learn that Karen died.
Well, Karen staring's kind of underselling it. She's in a strange pose with her hands above Fei.
Yeah.
When that opens.
Yeah. The pendant blings.
Yes.
Falls away.
Bling, bling.
Yes.
Super clean.
Yeah.
And then it also star wipes on Karen's face.
Yeah.
Which is real weird. Why'd it do that?
I don't know. It explains that even though the coward did this, the results, and by this we mean the explosion of energy that killed their mother, the results were then sort of offloaded to id. Quote, to avoid taking the responsibility for killing mother, he used me as a shield, telling us that the coward did this and he sealed himself away with only the happy memories and made me exist in these fucking dregs, basically.
Is this the first pendant drop? Like, is this the pendant swinging? Is this what the flashback is filtered through the rest of the entire time?
Oh, you mean from the beginning of the game?
Yeah, like I know that the pendant swings throughout the entire thing, but it was this event so traumatic that this is what Fei isolates and sees whenever that happens?
It would have to be.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So, I mean, even though the pendant belonged to Sophia or whoever forever ago, maybe, I don't even remember who it originally belonged to.
So Sophia had it at one point, but we find out later that Karen had one as well.
Yeah, I don't know if it was the same one or if, you know, these are handed out in Nissan quarter machines.
Yeah.
Right, if it's just some bullshit thing everybody's toting around like a sticky hand.
Yeah. A scene of a Fei anime child with blood on his face is like side by side with the film show of what was going on in the grassy knoll, I think.
Yeah.
And I think we get some more exposition about how id got all the bad stuff and the coward got all the happy memories and shut himself away.
I just read my note properly. There's 2 film strips.
Okay.
There's one side by side.
Okay, gotcha.
I read it as a second film strip, but I just didn't write it down properly. So you're right. There's like one that is the good memories, one that's the bad memories, and you can see it physically dividing in Fei's memory as about which side is going to retain which memory. Yeah,
and the current Fei, the protagonist Fei, is having a difficult time accepting these realities at this time.
Yeah.
He's not quite there yet. And then we get to go back to the battle scene.
He asks it to stop, and id says it can't. This is their world and everything they have.
Yeah.
So it's like he wants to share his trauma. In my head, he's doing it to torture Fei because he's an asshole. But realistically, he's maybe subconsciously doing it because he wants to unify with him and make him experience the trauma so that someone can understand him.
Yeah, I agree.
And then we go back to the battlefield.
We do. Khan is then sort of taking responsibility.
Yeah, he takes the blame
for not being able to save id. But I don't accept this because he's taking responsibility for not saving him, but he's not taking responsibility for treating id like a monster.
Yeah, he's also losing the fight.
Yeah, also that too. Id doesn't give a shit about this and runs his fist through Khan's gear, sort of.
But I hope you leave enough room for my fist because I'm going to ram it into your stomach and break your goddamn spine! Ah!
Yeah, he says Khan can die at his hand now.
Yeah. And from I think the scene blackens again.
It zooms out.
Oh, yeah, zooms out. The current Fei calls out to Khan, and then id is still blaming the coward or
a little
something.
bit. The current Fei calls out, but it zooms out to the clifftop mountainside where id had left Fei, and he's watching the scene play out like a movie from the cliff with that other personality.
Oh, weird.
Like, aren't they sitting down on that, watching all of this happen from afar, like ghosts?
Yeah, it is kind of like ghost watching there because Fei is physically in the red gear right now, but he is not.
Yeah.
That's
that consciousness is left behind. And these personalities are all now in conflict and are at risk of turning on each other.
Yeah, it's like a Reservoir Dog situation here inside of Fei's brain.
God damn you, Joe. Don't make me do this.
Larry, stop pointing that fucking gun at my dad!
Mr. Pink's just trying to do, Mr. Orange is trying to do the right thing, man.
Yeah, sure. Then we go back to the house.
Yeah, the front yard. And this is where we Rashomon it, where we see it from a different point of view.
Yeah, cool. Good reference. Rashomon, great film.
So the ball bounces toward adult Fei this time.
Yep.
And the camera pans as the house blends into multiple frames per second. Fei concludes it's all fake. All of it, he says, 3 times.
Yep. The coward has asked for the ball back, by the way.
Yeah.
And it's weird. The scene, just kind of, like you said, rips apart and tears to black. It would have been cool if they would have used the battle breaking animation right here.
Right there.
But they didn't.
Then we go black screen.
Yeah. After the scene goes black, the coward sprite then tries to push Fei out. Id then enters the scene. Fei wants the coward to show id everything, but he doesn't want to share it with the person who killed his mother. The coward doesn't
Right.
want to share it with Id, basically.
Who wants to blend happiness and sadness?
I think Fei. Third Fei.
Someone wants to blend them and suggest that Fei and Id should share the things they experience, which is either the brand new personality or Fei or the cat. Like, I don't even know. Because Id brought the brand new personality with him.
Yeah. I think it's our Fei that's trying to... That like, he's the protagonist of the game, so I read it as
our Fei.
he being the one to try to pull everyone back together.
Because they both do that Spider-Man picture where they blame each other for killing his mother.
Yeah. Oh, no.
The little one says, knock it off, and that we killed mother.
Yep.
Don't talk to me, all right? Knock it off!
It wasn't Miang or Khan. Don't look for a reason. Blame yourself. Face reality. Let's go.
Yes.
10-second countdown.
Fei then explains that they need to become one person, and this is, again, like playing around with some dissociative identity disorder stigma, where in order to quote-unquote heal the disorder, the system, the alters in the system need to become one person.
Yep.
The game story obviously requires this unification trope or whatever, but I think it would have been more realistic and more interesting from a story perspective for the 3 or 4 personas here to just gain acceptance of one another and just exist in the Fei body. That could have had a cool mechanical payoff.
Yeah.
We could have still had System Id, but not through our Fitbit, but through our mind. That would have been
three
cool.
more series of death blows. Whenever you invoke the coward, it's also running from battle.
So that would have been a more interesting way to play with the mechanics and a more interesting way to resolve the story. But instead, we are treated to a scene where all of these personas are trying to figure out how to merge into one. Walk on your own 2 feet. Face up to the reality that you don't want to see. Show them to Id everything you took for yourself. That is what Fei is saying to the coward.
Mm-hmm.
And then we see the full anime. We see,
this is where the Rashomon thing comes into play.
Yeah.
My bad.
The full thing. This time we see, as those beams of light shoot out of Fei, we see Karen shielding Fei from the blast. As if like she became herself for that last moment before she died. She sort of smirks or smiles at Fei.
Yeah, she didn't explode. She was bloody, but she hugged Fei afterward, and then the pendant dropped.
Yeah, the pendant dropped to the ground. Karen's dying, and her happy face becomes a JPEG.
Yeah, her dying bloody face becomes the portrait. Id rejects this because it kind of disobeys his truth, but Fei tells him that this is real.
Yeah.
So they're both going back and forth as trying to figure out what's real and what's not. And Id says that destruction was the only way that he could interact with the world from then on, which makes sense because he just saw his mother get destroyed.
Yeah. I have thoughts on this, by the way.
Yeah.
All along, Khan's message should have been to Id,
you didn't kill your mother?
You're okay. You didn't do this.
Yeah, if he just maybe revealed that vital piece of information.
Like, unless
he thought he did.
It didn't need to be sealed away. It needed therapy, right?
Yeah.
That's what he needed.
Does therapy exist in Xenogears world? I don't think so.
I mean, probably not, but maybe. I don't know. They've got.
Do they have a single payer system?
I don't know. Probably.
I bet you Solaris does have therapy, honestly.
Yeah.
I bet it's like full of propaganda and shit, but I bet it exists.
Yeah, you're right. So instead he sealed him away, and it is, I had a minor revelation here, is that it is not called Id because he is the Freudian id of the Fei system. It is called Id because that's what he thinks he should be. Like, he was told that he's a piece of shit, and he was told that you have to manage all of the anger for all of us. So he sort of took that destruction persona on himself because that's what he thought he was supposed to be, not what he is literally.
It is a product of his environment.
Yes, exactly.
Fei suggests that their power can actually be used to save people, and suggests they use it to save who?
Elly.
Elly.
Who's Elly? No, yeah.
So real quick, can we read anything into, like, you briefly referenced it, but when Karen saved him, did Miang allow that to take over, or did Miang, was she felt that 1% and felt compelled to do it? Was it love, or was it practical to protect Fei from this shit?
I read it as it was Karen's, motherly ethereal power taking over for that last split second of her life.
Okay.
Like, maybe the Miang transference occurs when, like, not at death, but like the moment before death.
Okay, and like, so when it sees the shit coming, so it escapes the body.
Yeah, maybe that's
point.
it. Could go any way.
We'll have to slow the pixels down to see when Elly turned into Miang the previous time. It was
true.
a little bit before.
It was right before she pulled Billy's fucking gun out.
It suggests that Fei takes memories from him to know who he is and what can be done to complete integration.
Okay, well, that is the first time that he saw his mother being so warm, and I think
Was it the first happy memory he was allowed to see?
I think so. Yeah.
That's a good point. So Fei got ultra trauma, and Id got ultra love.
Yeah,
At the same point. Usually you would want to string these out over a couple of months in group therapy sessions, but why not do it all at once in a period of about 10 minutes?
Yeah, I just thought of something else. When Khan sealed away Id, did he think that he was pulling the coward back out, but in reality he created the third Fei?
I mean, Khan's kind of on his own here, experimenting with this shit. So I think he was desperate to not have a Demon of Elru situation over again.
Yeah.
And just tried to snuff it out with a fire extinguisher instead of like a thing you actually snuff stuff out with gently. He just, he hit a candle with 3 or 4 fire extinguishers in a row.
Yeah.
And that resulted in this trauma, maybe, is my theory.
Id then decides that he, like you said a minute ago, he's going to grant Fei the memories that he has.
Yeah.
On purpose this time, or not to fuck with him. He's going to literally give him all of his memories. And this is the last time we're going to see Id, because this is like the quote unquote healing moment of all of the alter personas within this system. And
Unification.
Yeah, the unification. And like I said before, it didn't have to be like this. It could have just been acceptance. We're both going to exist in this body and use both of our powers together, but that's not how they did it.
Do you have anything else for this scene?
No. Faraway promise.
Okay, can we preempt this by saying, to me, other than Id holding up the Yggdrasil, what we're about to see, I forgot existed. This shit's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
This is really cool looking and ethereal and otherworldly, and didn't see it coming. Didn't see any of this coming. I was delighted by this upcoming scene.
I thought that the memories that Id was giving Fei were just the memories of his early adulthood.
No,
but he's giving him all the memories of
the classics
of the contact.
Yeah.
Since all of the pivotal memories of every transmigration of Fei are now coming to him via the track Faraway Promise.
Yeah, he's getting all the brain knowledge.
Do you remember way back in the beginning of the game when Fei went into Seiton's workshop and the music box began to play Faraway Promise, and Seiton talked about how music can sort of make you feel the memories of those that lived within you before.
Oh dear. Is it playing that? Yeah. That connects.
Yeah, and here we're getting the same music, and now Fei getting those memories many, many hours later.
Yeah. So we're on a rainy blue battlefield.
Yep.
What's the first thing you see here?
Well, I was like, okay, we're getting the memories, and those memories include Emperor Cain.
Yeah, there are brown acolytes slow motion carrying Cain on a throne thing. The throne is electrifying as it appears to be chasing who?
Elly, or no, Fei, young Fei, a young smaller Fei, I think.
And a young Elly too.
Yes.
She's running with Fei, who has on new clothes, finally.
Yeah.
An open white shirt and green pants.
Yeah.
Ensuring that they don't all have the Doug closet.
He's, Emperor Cain is shooting magic at them.
Yeah, it looks like lightning.
Yeah.
He shoots out lightning and one goes through Elly's stomach.
Yep.
As they're just running from this, they're slow motion running down this path, right?
Yeah.
And I read that as they're remembering it happening. You know, when you try to remember something and the memory's a little bit corrupted?
Yeah.
You play it out in slow motion in your head 1,000 times while taking a shower. This is exactly what that is.
Yeah, it's and it's interesting too, because that particular memory is one that we know nothing about to this point in the game.
No, we've seen it once before.
We have.
We saw Abel with 12 figures hiking up a mountain.
Ah, yes, in the anime.
That was it. We didn't know it was Abel at the time.
In a dream.
But I'm pretty sure that's Abel because none of the other ones were around for the Gazelle being that close.
Yeah, well, there was 12 of them, so it makes sense. Yeah.
Plus, Abel hated Cain, so you have to assume Cain knew that or found that out and led a death squad to go take this guy down. And
we don't know this is Abel at this point in time, but it's Abel.
Right, it's Abel, yeah. I don't think we're spoiling anything by saying, hey, this is Abel with the original Elly presence.
Yes. The next memory is something we've seen before.
Well, she tells Abel to live as she bleeds out.
Oh, yeah, just like Sophia told Lacan. Yes, okay. Yes.
And then, we go to another memory.
Elly is shielding Kim and Emeralda from the soldiers that are breaking into the lab underneath Zeboyam.
Yeah, and she's like, Emeralda is still that door off.
Yeah, Emeralda is still in the tube, and she's sealing that door, and we saw that Well, it was a while ago, but we definitely saw that during that initial Zeboim sequence.
What does she tell him?
Live?
She tells him to live.
Yeah.
Next, we go to the Nissan painting room.
Yes, Lacan's painting.
Then Sophia's ship. Then a battlefield. What does she tell Lacan?
To live.
To live.
Yeah.
Lacan did not.
He didn't.
I thought this was pretty well done.
It was.
Because to live was her last words on that crashing ship, and that just shows those are her last words every time.
Yep.
Were those her last words this time? Did she say that up there on the cross?
I don't think she's technically dead yet, so...
Well, yeah, that's a good point.
So then we see... We get some more memories. We get additional Lacan memories. We see Krillion's promise to create God. Then we see something is kind of awesome. It's Lacan in the Alpha Veltal wondering why he's been betrayed. He's then wondering if he just discovered his execution site, and he's kind of looking over that red-tinted battlefield that we saw so much in the flashbacks.
Yeah.
And then the scene's kind of panning around the wasteland, and I think this is like post-Diablos here, because he says, did I cause this? What has happened to me? What have I become? Then we hear live again.
Yes.
And then...
He misinterprets it.
Yeah, I lingered on this a little bit. I lingered on this moment a little bit, thinking about it, and wondered, and I think the answer is yes, but I'm wondering if this is the moment like after Lacan, aka Grahf, destroyed everything via coming into contact with the existence, because he would have already had to have come in contact with the Zohar because he's got the gear.
Right.
And all these people are dead and he doesn't know what's going on. And he's kind of like, he's still got a sense of himself. He's still got a physical body, but...
He doesn't get they did anything wrong. The people of Shavat are around him and he asks why they've turned on him. He's not understanding that he's fucking up here.
Yeah.
And his interpretation of living is he says he will live till the end of the world, even if he has to go to hell.
Yep.
Fuck.
That's interesting. Did you notice what's going on with the sprites here?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, I noticed it, and I've been thinking about it for...
A week?
A week, probably. First, we see the Alpha Veltal from the outside, and Lacan is standing there, but he has the id sprite.
Yeah.
And that's when he says, I will live. And then it phases into the Grahf sprite, and that's when he says even if I go to hell, I will live till the end of this world. And if the world does not come to an end, I will destroy it with my own hands. So I thought about this deeply. Well, why did they represent Lacan there as an id sprite? Like, is this like just because it was one of id's memories that he's getting to him? But I thought about it, and I think I understand that the id sprite here is a representative of an imperfect contact that's had exposure to the Zohar / the existence.
So not literally just a symptom of what caused his separation to make it not possible? Like when the will went into somebody else, it's separated?
It is imperfect because he's not unified with the antitype, with Elly, because he's sealed away.
Right.
And we have Fei. And in Lacan's timeline, Elly is dead. So a perfect contact with the existence cannot occur for him. So he turns into that id thing. And in our current timeline, our protagonist, Fei, and id, up to this point, were separate. The real Fei, kind of up to this point, was id, for the most part. Like, he's the one that experienced most of that life. He didn't necessarily have contact with Zohar to this point, obviously, because id has existed throughout this whole game.
Right.
But he had all that fucking shit done to him by Miang, which probably had some sort of Zohar power.
Yeah, I'm sure there was like some kind of energy that was similar there.
So Miang technically created an imperfect contact by doing those experiments, but not only just from the trauma, but also creating the form of the contact that is not the one that is needed to complete the scenario.
Do you think it was some 4D chess shit where she had to create an imperfect contact to create a perfect contact? Like hoping all this shit would wrap itself up in a way that was convenient 3, 10, 15 years down the road?
Yeah, I mean, perhaps if she would have taken a hands-off approach, then events would have gone differently. But she
like break some eggs to make an omelet type thing.
Yeah, I guess that's what she had to do. But I don't know. I don't think it was part of the plan. I think she was trying to harness the power and then cause the trauma, cause the dissociative identity disorder, which sort of fucked up the scenario up until this point.
Fucked up scenarios.
Yeah. So I got a lot of that one little quick scene. I thought it was really interesting.
Yeah. They did a lot with a little throughout all of these scenes, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
I still want the kind of offshoot where Grahf has to select his styling choices. Like, I mean, there's a bunch of check. He's like, yeah, I want something that's cool, scary looking, intimidating, mysterious. Unable to tell what it is from his side profile and very dark colors. Check.
In the 20th anniversary interview pamphlet, when they were talking to the character designer, the question was like, well, what's with Grahf? What's up with Grahf? And the order was like, I want a Darth Vader.
Okay.
And I mean, I guess we can get a little bit deeper into that a little bit later, but like Grahf is kind of a Darth Vader.
Yeah, with a Corsair hat.
With a Corsair hat.
And
also partially has to do with Fei's previous existences plus his father. So
yeah,
there's a lot to...
Driven by hatred, consumed.
Yeah.
All that stuff.
There's a lot there.
We get a save point next, and this is where you first notice that it's Fallen Star.
And that's probably the end of Fallen Star and beginning the next hidden chapter, which we'll talk about on the next episode. Okay. Hey, Eric.
Hey, Chris.
Would you like to consult the RealNet?
I'd love to.
Initializing RealNet.
The RealNet is our patrons. They're in Discord. They're listening to us record live. They're listening to all our fuck-ups, and they're also giving us valuable feedback.
They're not hearing music.
They're not hearing music.
Ellas no están escuchando música.
So, let's consult the RealNet and see what kind of comments we have today. There's a lot, and many of them appear to be very good. Alter Impulse says, exactly, one of my problems with the setting is how it doesn't show that no one has told id that he can be more, as the horrible thing it was, but as how he deserved the abuse and how he needed to take responsibility, WTF. And I should also credit Alter Impulse for giving me additional reading materials and notes on the portrayal of dissociative identity disorder in this video game. So that was very helpful for our conversation. So shout out to Alter Impulse.
Yeah, I agree. But there are some concessions, I think, for storytelling and media that aren't necessarily justifiable, but just, I don't know, like I think Inside Out was the only thing to even try to relate that I've seen, even though it was a children's movie.
Yeah.
Like everything else is just, like A Beautiful Mind or...
Initializing FakeNet.
How about Glass, Split, Fight Club, The Nutty Professor, and Me and Myself and Irene?
Primal Fear,
right.
Fight Club.
Yeah, fucking Fight Club.
Why does no one listen to me?
Alter Impulse says, and actually that's one point it does get correct about dissociation. Some people do feel happier or safer when they cut themselves off in their minds. Alter Impulse says, the stilled up thing is interesting for one reason. So intense trauma can actually generate new alters, and id/Fei was pretty much near dead when Khan dropped him off at Lahan Village. So that was when Fei was created. So that's really interesting. So like that read is that Khan knocked out Fei, or sealed up id, but didn't necessarily, he wasn't explicitly creating a persona in that point. He just put id through trauma, in which created another alter, which was the current Fei.
If Xenogears was a wacky cartoon, Khan would be hitting him on the head with a shovel until he woke up as the correct person.
Yeah, probably. You're probably right about that.
Such as the points in this podcast when I reverb Chris's voice.
Yeah. Great job, Eric. Cliff Racer says, we've already established that everyone except us can enter and exit Shavat at will.
Right, yeah.
Especially with Yui and everybody.
We didn't get the memo.
Yeah.
I wish there was some dialogue like, you all fucking climbed that thing? Holy shit. That's like their test to see if their gears are worthy to join their Maria Corps.
Yeah. Dendi says, definitely felt like Fei was channeling psychic/etheric abilities to freaking explode poor innocent people in those labs.
Yeah.
When they were doing the experimentation.
Yeah. It was a mess.
Alter Impulse agrees and says, agrees with us and says, I think the line about Khan thinking it's a childhood fantasies are some of the saddest lines in the game, because that actually happens with so many abusive parents.
Yeah. I mean, I know it's a stereotype for the father to just not give a shit, but...
Dendi says, yeah, Khan is almost up there with Gendo Ikari as worst dad.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Gendo is deliberately malicious, right?
Yeah.
Like, Khan just kind of a fuck up.
Yeah. Alter Impulse says, indeed, the violence stereotype is harmful to people who have the disorder for real, but I can see how it fits the plot and the concepts. That said, I think it should definitely have been shown as Ed developing as a person and recovering. That would have actually made a better statement about that, the dissociative identity disorder.
You'd see Ed in like a business suit with his haircut.
Yeah. Denti says, or they could have done more to portray Ed as protecting the entire system, the person that Fei is.
The system Id.
That actually makes system... I'm sure system id was just a term that they used because a system from a computer standpoint. Mm-hmm. But it is interesting that they call it system id when you think about it from a DID perspective. Cliff Racer says, as I recall, destroying Elry was Grahf /id's goal, not Solaris.
Yeah, like Solaris had an entire division of the there are elements dedicated to kind of covering that wind part of that continent, and then
because
that dissolved the division after that continent went away.
That was where they got subjects from, right?
Yeah, it was a major abduction zone, I think.
Here's an interesting conversational question here. Dent D says, did the original Elly in Abel's time have a pendant? Per the anime cutscene way back at the start of the game, where Abel's crying in the desert watching the other people walk away. I don't think so. I think that we were seeing the pendant swing as a symbolic, like, triggering of those memories within Fei in his dreams.
It's a possibility. If we had eyes on the mother figure that Abel saw that created that desire that we see later in the next podcast, probably.
Yeah.
I don't think we get close enough to actually see that, but I can imagine there being that pendant on that person.
But why would that person have that? The religion wouldn't be established yet.
Well, yeah, but if you find an artifact from another culture, you can worship it thinking it was important, right?
Yeah.
Like somebody on Cybertron, I'm sure, worshipped Unicron's head.
Carfo says, I like the reveal of the coward Fei and the revelation that the coward was the original persona that id was created from, and that Fei was then created on top of because of Wiseman creating a new one to forget about his past to keep id dormant, which is a good way of summarizing all of that stuff. Alter Impulse says, I think most therapy in Xenogears setting had already been reduced to the biological variety, i.e. give them the drugs. Because we saw Ramses with the mental stabilizers, we saw SSRI infusers that Tara gave Fei, and we saw the drive.
Well, there's also Krellian. It's like, you're having trouble, huh? What if you were also a dog person? Would that solve your problems?
Yeah. Dent D says, I think Xenogears says moms are tough. I just read it as Karen caring so much she took control back from Miang.
Chris, what is moms are tough from?
I don't know.
Final Fantasy 13.
Oh.
Moms are tough.
13. That's the one I didn't finish.
Yeah, sure. I like that game.
I thought it was fine. I just didn't finish it.
7 is a better expression of the combat they were going for.
Yeah. And talking about Lacan looking like id before the Grahf helmet, Alter Impulse says, I actually see it more as they have the power even before they touch the Zohar itself. So anyone in that line can technically take that form as sort of a shapeshifter, a Super Saiyan, I guess. And only a few people are able to do it, such as Lacan and Fei. In the case of Fei, he only did it through id coming out, taking over, taking control, taking the stage. That's all that I have from the RealNet. Thank you, RealNet, for joining us. We've been having some good crowds lately, and hopefully it's because you like listening to us and not because there's a pandemic and you have nothing better to do.
It can be both.
It could be both. It can be both. Thank you for listening. Stay tuned for the outtakes. This episode is a production of Retrograde Amnesia. Thank you, Eric, for all of your hard work editing the podcast. Thank you, Mark, for the intro track. If you like the show, please consider supporting us on Patreon at patreon.com/retroam. Get early access, bonus episodes, mini-series, and more. Find us on Twitter at RetroAmnesiaPod. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the podcast on Apple, Google, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Please give us a rating and review on Apple Podcast. It helps people discover the show. If you have questions or feedback, email the show at retrogradeamnesiapodcast@gmail.com. Shout out to the RealNet for joining us tonight. I almost said Real Nate again. Until next time.
Smoke weed every day. Yes, we will kill God.
Yes, and now you may go back to sleep. We would suffer fools gladly. Okay, now I'm recording. So, are you good? Are you good? Because that
we'll see.
Are you sure? Because that thing can.
Is there a way that I could like spit my game into it from like this angle, or is that not? But now it's only like my mouth vision.
A podcast. Getting this stuff to work. Okay.
Chris is oscillating.
I'm oscillating. I'm gyrating. And it says my role was to have all the
It says it was Mother's turn. I'm reading the wrong thing.
Alter Impulse says a 9000G Nissan sticky hand LMAO. It's sticky hand.
Yeah, on the ceiling.
Yeah, they stained my ceiling.
Yeah, there's, but we can't go there right now.
No. Cool, good reference. Rashomon, great film.
I almost said Rochambeau, not the same thing.
Yep. Objection. That's all.
You're supposed to slam the table when you said objection.
Oh man, there's just too much delicate machinery on this table.
To purge. 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 To purge.
To purge. To purge. To purge.
To purge.
I'm sorry.
I'm not.